Well, it's been about a year that Genesee and I have been on YouTube, and you guys have asked a lot of great questions in the comments. So I just wanted to take the chance to answer some of those questions. Let's go see what you guys asked. Well, shoot, if you guys are looking for a shoulder pump, 6 rounds per time of 1 pegboard, a 50-foot handstand walk, we'll definitely get the job done. All right, let's jump into your questions. Logan asks, when you decided that CrossFit was your sport, did you drop everything and do CrossFit, or did you have a job while training at first? This is a question that I get a lot. I had a job when I first started training in CrossFit. I was actually simultaneously transitioning out of football when I decided that I wanted to do CrossFit. I was also graduating from college. So I just graduated from college, got a job as a loan originator, working full-time in downtown Seattle, and started training in CrossFit. When I started training at CrossFit, the whole intent was to go to the CrossFit Games. So I wasn't just training and dabbling in CrossFit, I was doing it to go to the CrossFit Games. So I was training like a Games athlete from the beginning while working a full-time job. There were times and seasons when I would work 40 to 50, some summers it was 50 to 60 hours a week, depending on if I was working weekends. So I had to prioritize my timeline very, very well. In my first few years of CrossFit, I even took my work computer to the CrossFit Games, and I would answer some emails in between events or after the day's completion of events, because that's just what you had to do. But I had to prioritize it. I had to make sure that I was committed to training first, working. Training did come before work in my mind, but obviously it didn't pay the bills at first. All that to say, you can train and work a full-time job. Let me correct myself. You can train to go to the CrossFit Games and work a full-time job. There's a lot of people that have done it and maybe honestly continue to do it. And I didn't just do it for a short period of time. I did it for like 3 years, I think. So all of 2013, 2014, and the most of 2015, I was still working as a loan originator. That's a long period of time. That was 3 CrossFit seasons and 2 CrossFit Games that I was working full time. Again, bringing my laptop to the games and working between events. So it can be done. Which there's a beautiful segue into Matt's question, which is how many hours to train a week for someone who wants to get better at CrossFit with a full-time job. This is so dependent on what your aim is and what your goal is. When you say get better at CrossFit, I'm gonna take the assumption because you're asking me that you're looking to compete, but just really quick, if you were just wanting to get better at CrossFit, you can get better at CrossFit just by doing class workouts. That's the beauty of CrossFit. It's potent, it's efficient in its high intensity. But if you want to get better as a competitor, you do have to prioritize your training. And that was what I alluded to with Logan's question, is training was a priority. Genesee and I used to wake up at 4:45, 5 o'clock, and we were to the gym by 5:15, 5:30 a.m. We would hit our first session before I went to work. I would go to work for the 8 to 9 hours that I had to be at the office, and then I would come back for another session in the evening, trained somewhere between 5:30 to 7:30. Then we would come home, get dinner, pretty much get ready to go to bed. Genesee was also in pharmacy school, so she had her own little schedule, but that was my schedule during the day. We did that on such a regular basis. It was tiring, and we didn't really have a whole lot of room for other things, but my goal was to go to the CrossFit Games. I was so hyper-focused on that, it didn't matter what the schedule was like. I knew that I had to train, but I also knew that I had to go to work. So, with a full-time job, do what you need to do what your requirements are, and do it to the best of your ability. But the time outside of your job, make your training a priority. Of course, in respect for the important areas of your life, like your family and
friends.
Like your family and your friends. The relationships are important as well. We were just lucky to have a lot of our friends and relationships at the gym. Genesee and I did that for so long. I remember there was one morning when we got up and it was just a really hard training week. I'm still working full time. We get up, get to the gym by like 5:15 and park the car, turn it off, look at each other, and all of a sudden wake up like a half hour later. Both of us had fallen asleep because we just took like this subtle second to take a deep breath, found ourselves in relaxation and fell asleep. So it's part of the struggle. If you want to get better as a competitor and you have a full-time job, there are just some things that you're gonna have to sacrifice. I encourage you to just lean into that. Lean into it. It's gonna be worthwhile. And speaking of busy schedules, Lucas asks, might sound a bit funny, but do CrossFit athletes shower after every workout session? I think it's pretty safe to say the answer is no, unfortunately. I personally like to shower as much as I can. So if I know I'm gonna have a big break, I don't like to sit in dirty, grimy feels. But I know that there are athletes that don't shower. We work out a lot. It's part of the reason why athletes don't wear shirts a lot is because you would be doing a lot of laundry. Well, since I just finished up a session, I'm gonna go shower. I'll talk to you guys soon. All right, before we jump into more questions, I have a question for you. Is it weird to put on the same shirt that I wore previous to showering? Is that gross?
Cole, I can see chalk on that.
Well, I took it off. I didn't even sweat in it. It was still clean in my eyes. It's kind of gross. It's fine. I don't know, whatever. Let's jump back into your questions. Gary asks, what is the best nutritional advice you can give? That was a very broad question. I struggle with what to eat, what times of day are best to eat, etc. that will give you the most energy to train. If we're talking in terms of training, you got to remember that CrossFit is a very glycolytic sport, meaning you use a lot of glucose. Carbohydrates are your friend for that reason. Ideally, you're going to want to take in your carbohydrates surrounding your training. So in the 60-minute window prior to training and in that 30-minute post-training, that's when you want to take in some carbs. You know, I always tell people something in that 40 to 60 carb range is a pretty good amount. However, I'm still a firm believer in having a consistent intake of protein throughout the day and just overall calories throughout the day. If you want to boost performance and speed up recovery, you have to fuel your body. I understand that there are a lot of nutritional fads out there, and for some people they're great and they're great ways to lose weight. And there's definitely a place for that. But in speaking for performance, we have to fuel our bodies. And the best way to do that is with clean foods and ideally on a regular basis. However, I also know that in order to perform really well in a training session, I don't want to be bogged down by a lot of fiber. So when I'm taking in carbohydrates prior to training, I try to take in something a little bit more in the simple carb range. That again is only surrounding training sessions. Outside of that, I try my best to do clean, whole foods, things like sweet potato, oatmeal, rice. But for me, my pre-workout carbohydrate is a buttermilk pancake. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it's fantastic. So the best nutritional advice that I can give is find something that works for you, that you can do in a sustainable, something that you know you can stick to. What Genesee and I have found is that tracking macros and working with Work It Against Gravity, which we've been doing for the last 3 to 4 years, has really worked for us and has become something that we know that we can stick to. So find that thing that works for you. And along the nutrition lines, Brandon asks, any advice on how to get more quality calories in? I really like this question because I think that people subconsciously know what is healthy for you, but one of the rules of thumb that we use is eating foods that we have to prepare or that we have to cook. That's kind of how our scramble came to be, is we were preparing things. We wanted to prepare food that had some leafy greens or some vegetables in it, and we started scrambling things together and it turned out to be really good. We also season things lightly with salt and pepper, just leave it at that. But if you have to prepare it, that means that it's not packaged food, or it's just whole foods that are of higher quality. We also work with a great meal delivery company. Those can be a great resource, so check those out if that's something that could be helpful for you. We use Trifecta systems, they've been great. But when looking to get better calories in, prepare your food and do your best to stay away from packaged foods if you can. Okay, Lizard Legs 27 asks, what are your secrets for a huge neck? Genetics. It runs in the family. That and also just lifting a lot of weights, and every chance you get, just flexing the neck. I mean, no, honestly, lots of years of football, lots of years of lifting, it develops a big neck. And yes, it actually does run in the family. My mom was once likened to a linebacker. I remember she was kind of proud of it. I don't know, maybe. Sorry, Mom. Okay, I'm gonna eat the breakfast. See you. Remember that thing I said about not wearing shirts as CrossFitters because you don't want to do laundry? Yeah, well, welcome to my life. Well, anyways, back to your guys' questions. Joe asks, based on what criteria did you choose your coach? What are you looking for in other professionals you work with? Nutritionists, sports psychologists, physio, etc. Is their knowledge more important to you than, let's say, their character traits? The criteria I went through in choosing my coach, who was Ben Bergeron, was a bit of a courting process. I had a relationship with my sports agent who knew Ben Bergeron, and because of that connection, he thought we would be a good fit for each other and said, hey Cole, you should come out to Boston and come train with Ben and some of his athletes. His athletes were Matt Frazier, Katrin Davis-Daughter, and Michelle Letendre at the time. And we did a regional prep camp out there. And going through that process, we were out there in Boston. Ben and I really connected. And that was in May of 2015. We didn't start working together until October 2015. So we went through the rest of that game season as just acquaintances, friends, if you will. But it was really in that October when we both had a conversation saying, hey, I really appreciate what you stand for and I want to work with you. And that was vice versa. Ben was one of the few people that I was willing to work with at the time because of his mindset, because of the way that he approached things. He works with an athlete from the mind out, not athletics in, which I really, really respect. So I think that goes back down to part 2 of the question. And I look for character traits far before I look for knowledge, because character will trump knowledge any day of the week. If you have the character, you're going to push yourself to diligently search out the knowledge, and that's something that I really appreciate about Ben. He will be the first one to tell you that he doesn't know it all. He doesn't have it all figured out, but he's willing to search for it and he's willing to work for it, and that's something I really, really respect about him. So I would definitely say character traits trump all. And the final question of the day is from John, asks, which training shoe do you use? I use the Nike Metcon. I personally use the Metcon 4 and 5 for my day-to-day training, all of my conditioning work. But then I'll use things like the Nike Metcon Free for running and plyos, box jumps, different things like that. A little bit more of the athletic side of the sport. And then I use the Romaleo for lifting. Well guys, that does it for me. If you have any more questions that you want answered, drop them in the comments below and I will see you guys in the next video. I'm gonna go find my shirt now. See you later.
Good?
Yeah.